He looked at me straight in the eye and he said, Stephen, I know what's wrong with you. You're stressed. And it was like a light bulb moment going out. And that's when I decided to get into mindfulness. And it was 6 months of training in mindfulness that really got me ready for that phone call, Colm.
And just before we get into the phone call, so because I'd forgotten that piece. I know you shared your story with me before over many cups of coffee, but I'd forgotten about those 6 months. But in those 6 months, you started training in mindfulness, did you?
It's a good point, and that's why I want to say it about it. So I done it was my first introduction to mindfulness was then, but I was doing a course. I had an 8 week mindfulness course I did called the mindfulness based stress reduction. It's the introduction that most people do to mindfulness because of the word stress, and that's the one reason why they're getting into it. But I think I didn't really practice mindfulness until that phone call.
Folks, you're very welcome to another Coffee with Colm. Thank you for joining me. This week we've got a very special guest with me, Stephen Downey, a friend of mine. Stephen, pop in and say hello.
It is great to be here. This is my cup of coffee. It says, sometimes it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness just to be happy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's a great start. That's a very mindful start.
Absolutely.
Dare I say. Come here, Stephen. Great to see you. I know Stephen, folks, for a long time now, a thorough gentleman. And he's got a fascinating backstory, which I think he might, if we're nice to him, he might share some of it. But I just wanted to chat to him about what's going on for him, where he's come from, where he's headed, and all the rest of it. So, Steve, you're very welcome to Coffee with Colm. Thank you for being here. This is season 9, and we're just kicking off. And this time round, I want to talk to good people like your good self to find out what's going on, because we all learn from each other. I was at a conference years ago and somebody said, turn to your neighbor and said, you could be my teacher. I thought it was the best phrase ever, right? So you could be our teacher, Stephen. I'm sure you will be for somebody, and you are for many already. Tell us who you are, Stephen Downey, from where, what are you doing in life, etc.
Colin, thank you so much. Beautiful introduction, and you're so right. We can all be teachers to everybody around us, and it's a beautiful way to put it. So yeah, no, I'm Stephen. I'm from Dublin, Ireland. I've lived here all my life, apart from a few 4 years when I went to Waterford for college at the tender age of 17. I've been working in the IT industry in Ireland for we're coming up 25 years next year. It's been a fantastic road, but like I said on the mug there, I've always had a pursuit of happiness, a pursuit of what we want in life, and I think there's many people out there are very similar in that way, in that regard. But along my own journey, Dad, I've had many bumps in the road. I've had unexpected phone calls. Like I don't know if you remember the Baz Luhrmann song about the hardest things in life will happen, and that's that unusual phone call that you get on a lazy afternoon. Now that's extremely badly paraphrasing what he said, but it happened to me about 10 years ago when I got one of those uncomfortable phone calls. And I think I learned in the aftermath of that why how we can learn to respond and react. I've studied mindfulness for many years as a result of burnout and work, as a result of the aftermath of that phone call.
Well, come here. Can I stop you there just for a second, right? Because
sorry, I'm going into.
This is the perfect guest on the podcast. Throw them a question, let them off, and they keep going. So thank you for that. But just before we delve into that phone call in a moment, if you don't mind. So just recap, you're a dub, lived in Dublin all your life except for 4 years in Waterford. Did IT engineering, is that what you said?
Software development.
Software engineering, software engineering. And got into that profession. I understand, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, I understand that you're headed in a slightly different direction, or perhaps you've got your sights in a slightly different direction, or building upon that going forward. But it was interesting when you said about phone calls, because my mother, God rest her, she passed in February 23, Dorian, she always said, everything's great until the next phone call. Everything's great until the next phone call. The next phone call can just turn your life on a dime. So you studied software engineering. Your current career, your day job, dare I say, is in that space. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been working in Many industries. If you buy a flight from Aer Lingus, there's a high chance that what you're looking at is something that I've wrote in the past. If you're a farmer and you're looking for EU grants, I've worked on some of the inspection systems for processing your grants. If you've bought a house and you paid stamp duty, I've worked on the application to create stamp duty.
Are you on a percentage, Stephen? Are you on a percentage?
On percentage, I wish I was. So I've worked in many industries, but like that, it's a career that it's brought a lot of stress. It's a high pressure position. I've worked for, I'd say it's about 15, 20 years now in contracting, where you are brought into a company, and I'm about to do that very soon again into a new company, where you need to hit the ground very hard running, and you need to learn what it is. But I'm very lucky in the last few years that I I've grown in that position. Things have, like, people have leave jobs, it's all gone thrown to me, and I actually really love learning. Whether that's in IT or whether that's within mindfulness space or whether that's just mindset. I love the idea of learning and growing.
Wow. And it's very interesting to hear that, because we're going to talk about mindfulness in a moment, and a direction that I know you're headed in, and a space that I know you're supremely interested in. What's really interesting to me, and perhaps others here, is we're meeting a software engineer. And with the greatest respect to software engineers, they're typically not people. Let's be honest, right? Dark room, hoods up, earphones on, tapping away, creating good work, providing tools for the rest of us to use, like the ones that you described that you've already worked on. But people skills oftentimes, now, and this is terribly general, but I apologize to those out there who are listening who might be in that space, but I think you know what I mean, right? Not known for their people skills, or their perhaps interest in the human, right? And again, lads, take me on if you wish, but that's a perspective, right? Right or wrong. So here we've got Stephen Downey, self-confessed software engineer by profession and training, and yet he's stepping into the mindfulness space. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that in a couple of seconds. And I understand there's a book on the horizon, by the way. I've just hung you with that statement. But you got into the mindfulness space, and I think there was a phone call involved. Are you happy to go there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just in defense of a lot of engineers, and I've learned this actually over the last 2 or 3 years through my own family, many of them are actually masking autistic. It's something that's very unrecognized, but that's another day's conversation. But I've learned so much myself about that over the last few years. But that phone call, I actually, to be honest with you, my introduction to mindfulness actually happened 6 months before that phone call. And I really believe in the universe, the power of the universe, and that things happen at the right time to help us in certain ways. And I collapsed. This is going back to 2013 or so. I actually collapsed in work one day and was brought to hospital. And I was told by the doctor that I thought I was having a stroke at the time. I was under a severe amount of pressure in the job. And the consultant took me aside in Beaumont Hospital. I won't get into all the rest of the details of what happened, but he said one thing that changed my life. He looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "Stephen, I know what's wrong with you. You're stressed." And it was like a light bulb moment going out. And that's when I decided to get into mindfulness. And it was 6 months of training in mindfulness that really got me ready for that phone call, Colm.
And just before we get into the phone call, so because I'd forgotten that piece. I know you shared your story with me before over many cups of coffee, but I'd forgotten about those 6 months. But in those 6 months, you started training in mindfulness, did you?
It's a good point, and that's why I want to say it about it. So I done it was my first introduction to mindfulness was then, but I was doing a course. I had an 8-week mindfulness course I did called the mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's the introduction that most people do to mindfulness because of the word stress, and that's the one reason why they're getting into it. But I think I didn't really practice mindfulness until that phone call came from, and unfortunately, it's like it's many people's lives change, like I mentioned earlier on, when a phone call comes along on an average day. I was at home, it was the summer, I was off with my family, and my dad rang And he asked me one question, which will always haunt me for the rest of my life. He said, "Are you alone?" And even like, yeah, whenever I talk about it, you can hear my voice, it's going. But he didn't want me to be alone. And I was very, very lucky at that time that my wife and family were all off for the summer and I happened to have a day off. And he told me that unfortunately there was a road accident that day and my brother passed away. Um, it was, yeah, it's not something you expect. My brother was passionate about motorcycles and I think he had just turned 40 about a few months before. He had traveled all around Africa and on his motorbike. And unfortunately, that day was not his day.
Your brother, sorry for your loss. Obviously, as I'm sure everybody who's listening to this today, none of us expect that taken too soon. I was going to ask you what age is your brother, but you said that you just turned 40.
Yeah.
What's your brother's name?
Mark.
Mark. That was tough. That was a tough call to get.
It was, but I think it was a turning point in my life, Colm, because it made me realize how fragile life is. Mark has 5 children at the age of 40, and it's been a hard journey. Many people going on different journeys in different ways, and it can always be difficult. But what I've learned through my mindfulness, and it's something that I think helps a lot of people in life, is that life is not about the events that happen. It's not about that afternoon when I had to get help for stress, or it's not about that phone call. It's about what you decide to do afterwards. What I did is something very unusual. I had 2 young girls at the time. They're very big now. I've just celebrated my eldest 16th birthday this week. But at the time they were very young. And they wanted to know why dad was crying all the time. They wanted to know why I was so upset. I'm a very emotional person, as you've seen in the last few minutes, but I'm not afraid to share it either. And but I knew that I needed to do something positive, and there was so much negative, so much bad happening that I wanted to do something positive from it. And somebody had introduced me to a thing called 100 Happy Days, and so I think it was the 1st of August that year, I decided to do a thing called 100 Happy Days. And apologies, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. What I did that day, each day, was that I had to capture a moment. And the whole premise of this is that in our darkest days, no matter what is happening, there's always a moment to be happy and a moment to be grateful for each day. And that has been the premise of my work within mindfulness ever since. That no matter what a dark day is, what's happening, and we all have different journeys, different things happen for different people, but there's always something positive happening, whether it's just that cup of coffee or whether it's that somebody unexpected said hello to you and actually just cheered you up. But our mind, unfortunately, has this premise of forgetting those moments. And there's actually a fantastic man called Dr. Rick Henson who did a lot of study within the mindfulness space and within a practice called taking in the joy. And many people don't realize that for us to remember a beautiful moment and for it to stay with us, we have to give it about 20 to 30 seconds. And so I have, and this is a slight tangent, but every day I have a alarm goes off on my phone at 11:11. And the idea is that at 11:11, I stop and I appreciate no matter what is going on around me that day, I look at what the moment is happening. But so for those 100 days, I captured a moment each day. And
Weird. Just that's sorry to interrupt you, but that's a fascinating practice there. 11:11. That's very clever.
oh yeah,
In a very positive way, and it means that you're forced to or reminded to
yeah.
appreciate the moment, no matter what's going on. So I love that. So congratulations. Great. Please continue.
It's actually funny because I have this strange alarm on my phone that goes off. It's just like a notification. I don't know what it's from. Can't work out what the app is, right? But it comes on at random times on my phone. And at first I was actually thinking, oh, that's so annoying. But then I embraced it and I said, I can't turn it off. So now I have this random reminder, not just at 11:11, but sometimes during the day I get another reminder. And instead of getting angry at it, I go, there's another reminder.
I wonder, is that Mark
Is that Mark? I don't know. Well, listen, I've had many reminders from Mark actually. If you don't mind me actually mentioning one, recently, I was doing a talk, and I had an interactive part within that talk, and it was the 10 year. It was 10 years actually since Mark passed away, and um, I was putting all the slides together, and part of it was a slide from a company called Menti, and you need an unique code to actually access that slide. I think you were listening on the day. That code, and this is no word of a lie, that code is actually his phone number that came up, and I looked it up. It's in the millions, a chance of that number coming up. So listen, there is beautiful moments
Of
happening all
course.
around us, and I'm convinced that somebody up there is looking down on us and
Yeah,
trying to
I'm with you on that. You mentioned the universe earlier, Mark. Sorry, didn't like there's a Freudian slip right there. Welcome to the coffee with Colm, Mark. So Stephen, yeah, I'm a believer in the universe too. I think we're all supposed to do something. You have a part to play. I have a part to play. Shared recently a phrase, a Viktor Frankl phrase: "We detect rather than invent our missions in life." And I think that's even what's happening here with me and indeed with you, separately and together as it happens here this morning. But I'm a believer in the universe that really there are no accidents. You know, if something happens, there's something, and it might be 20 years before you can point back to it and say, ah, I get it now. So whatever's happening in your life there, people, and you're listening to this, you know, accept it. Accept it for what it is. Ask what's the lesson in it, and see where you're being led. Sorry, Stephen, I again interrupted you, but I'm fascinated by.
did, but you introduced something very amazing. Viktor Frankl also has a very famous quote called "Between stimulus and response, there is an opportunity," and it's like I think that's what we need to do in life, is that not to look at, like, it's like, I know in the midst of things going wrong and everything hitting you, it's so hard to look for that opportunity to breathe, the opportunity to just create a space. And that really essentially is what mindfulness is all about. It's about creating that small little space. Uh,
So my understanding from where you're at the moment is you earn your crust, dare I say it, in the IT space, but you put time and effort and focus and intention and energy and openness and willingness and service into the mindfulness space. Do you expect that that's where you're headed into the future?
It is, and it's actually funny. Like, we've touched on all parts of this, especially the unfortunate perception that many software engineers have, is that they're not people, and because of that, many suffer from stress. Many people in the IT industry are afraid to share their emotions. They share that, and that's the side I would love in the long run to help, is just to help people in IT just work with uncomfortable emotions. And uncomfortable is about actually expressing it. But there's many lessons from mindfulness that can help. The podcast has been going for many years as well. I paused that a bit. We had a few things going on in our own lives, and I decided to pause that over the last year or two. But I will be taking that back up. The book which you mentioned
But
is something that,
before we go to the book, where can people find your podcast?
yeah, so the podcast actually it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, everywhere you go. If you look for the Mindful Living Guide, anywhere, you'll find a podcast. There's some fascinating episodes. I got up to 49, and I actually recorded 50 with a good friend of ours, and just something was sitting uncomfortable with me going on to the 50. So I will be re-editing and putting them up in the next few weeks, and recording the podcast again. It's
Yeah.
I love conversation. It's like this conversation, Colin. We learn so much about people when we just listen to their hearts and just let them flow and have a good conversation.
Well, yeah, even that point that this conversation is evolving. We've no structured agenda, certainly no agenda. We've no structured format to follow here. We're just having a conversation in the hopes of everybody getting to know you and me a little bit better. Viktor Frankl, by the way, for those that may not know, was a Holocaust survivor who, while he was being worked on, that's the wrong word, experimented on, his body being experimented on without anesthetic by his captors, he went into a space where he said, I need to remember this so I can teach it. And that's where he came up with that, where between stimulus obviously pain in this case, and response, which is whatever. There's a space, and that's where our power resides. So thanks for bringing that in, Stephen. The book, have you working title yet?
I have written title. I've that's the front cover many times. It's hard to see in the blur, but I printed it out. I've had it many times. And you know what? I always look at the universe. I've been messing with the title, and for some reason the universe blurred out the title there. So obviously that wasn't the right title. But yeah, no, it's like, listen, I come to it. I think about it. It's something on my mind for the last few years, because I think, like you were mentioning about software engineers, about people in the IT industry, I think mindfulness also has an uncomfortable name sometimes, about that. It's a practice that people go off, and monks go ahead and, give me 1 second, sorry. All these people have this interpretation of mindfulness that it's something that you need to go away from your own life to do. And my whole premise about mindfulness is that it's about bringing the practice, the informal type of mindfulness, into your everyday. It's like my 11:11 alarm. It's an informal practice that I do every day. Obviously, we have to anchor that with a formal sit-down practice, but it's the informal. It's that just appreciating the day. It's being in the shower, and like I know one teacher said to me before, like, who do you share your shower with? Every morning we go into the shower and we might be fighting with all the people from yesterday. We might be having uncomfortable conversations that we were afraid to have. But how often have we gone into a shower from the start to the finish, just being there and appreciating the flow of the water, the feel of the soap, the smells, the aromas, and just being present for that moment. And it's a powerful, powerful practice. But there's many like that. But for the book,
it's interesting. Sorry, Stephen, it's interesting because well, first of all, you've made mindfulness you've taken it out of the woo-woo space, right there, right, and brought it into the shower. But I think that's fantastic. It's immediately applicable. So thank you for that, right? And the second thing you said, and I'm a fan of this type of stuff too, is that you come from the IT space and you would like to serve the IT space because you understand these people, right? And you now have another perspective on life that you could perhaps bring to those people. That's a wonderful way of looking at a business in the mindfulness space, dare I say it, where you go where you're known and where you know. There's no point, with respect, you going off into the banking world to try and become a guru in, well, I'm not saying there's no point, but don't you mean, it'd be much harder for you to do that, become a guru in mindfulness in the banking space, when you deeply, deeply, deeply know what the IT space needs. So happy days.
And it's funny you say that, because I've worked in financial services for the last few years as well, within the IT industry, and I think it's applicable to all professionals. People are sitting at a desk and are afraid to show their emotions. You know, that's where I come across to many people like that. But listen, it's something that it's an involving process. Like I've done many talks in companies, and I love the chats that we have, and discovering that there's so many people that are afraid to talk about this thing until somebody shows vulnerability in their industry and is not afraid to share. And that's where I think there might be the space for it, that I'm really excited about.
Well, I'm excited for you too, and I'm excited for the people that you're going to serve. Well done. That was a great response, by the way, to my banking analogy. You're absolutely right. It's not about IT professionals in per se. It's about people who are sitting at a screen all day, every day, with very little human interaction. So wish you continued success with that. Tell me your proudest moment, one of your proudest moments to date.
Oh, I think many. I went on a very long journey in 2017. It took me, I hit rock bottom. A lot of stuff hit me a long time ago, and it took me a long journey to get over that. And part of that journey, I sat in an audience in TEDx in Tala, and I said, I'd love to learn to speak. I'd love to share my story like these most eloquent people have done. And I spent 2 years learning to be a public speaker. And in 2019, I got to share my story. So if you want to hear more actually about my 100 happy days, I'd encourage you to listen to my TEDx. It's called The Value of a Moment, and it's on YouTube if you look it up. And it's all about that moment, because at the time after that phone call and after my brother passed away, we found a family photo and we realised that that moment that we captured at a party where all of our family were together was actually our last ever family photo. And we didn't appreciate that moment at the time. And I can see me lighting up talking about this, but it's about just appreciating our moments when they happen, you know, and that's what it is about, that pausing, about seeing that sunrise, to just really seeing those things are happening. Every day when I'm commuting to Dublin city centre, there's a part of my journey that goes over the M50 and you see nothing but traffic. But if you look out that window and you're on the top of that bus and you're looking out and there's the most beautiful sunrise, and sometimes I see the train come past at the same time, and there's so much beauty in the world that is happening when you're stuck in traffic. And I think it's a great analogy for life, that we kind of are on this journey kind of going from A, B, C, D, and like it's gone through from my mug all the way to Viktor Frankl, that we are all on this journey. And there's a great philosopher I follow called Alan Watts, and he talks about life and about that our journey through life. We feel like it's from A to B, but it's not. Like if you go to a musical, it's not about getting to the end of that musical. It's about every chord along the way, and he encourages us to dance every day.
Wow.
And so what I'd encourage you to do is learn to dance every day. Learn to find the rhythm of your life. Learn to find the rhythm of your moments, and just get out there and love life, because no matter what's going on, you might be looking at this, wherever you're looking at it, and you might be having the worst day of your life, but I guarantee that something good has happened today, but you didn't want to remember it because you were thinking too much about the past or the future.
Ooh, or the future. I love it. I love it. I love it. Stephen Downey, an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you for taking time out to have coffee with Colm. Stay there for a moment. We're going to give the last word to you in a second, if you don't mind, please. But folks, was not amazing? Thank you for joining for this week's Coffee with Colm. I hope and trust that everyone got something from it. Please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And then very importantly, come back next week and we'll share another coffee together. And I ruminate in some other aspect of life and business, ideally and hopefully with another great guest. In the meantime, get some great coffee for sure. Get some fresh air. Get some R&R. If you spend too much time with other people, I recommend you take some time out and spend some time alone and get to know yourself. If you spend too much time alone, I recommend you go meet some people. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, get stuck in, make next week count. And I'll see you here this time next week for another Coffee with Colm. But before we go, Stephen Downey, last word to you.
Colm, I just encourage people just to look out for the moments in their day. Look out for those little tiny moments, and what I always describe them as, it's moments to be grateful for and moments you'll always remember.